Hi, my name's Leon, and I think it's about time I started reading comics. Not those kind of comics. Recently, I've been starting to read American comic books. Specifically, DC comic books. And almost in a perfectly timed, not at all planned fashion, DC have recently started their Absolute line, a new series of comic books that basically reboots a new universe and is a perfect jumping on point for new readers to get into some of their most famous characters. At the moment, there's 3 books in the Absolute line, which are Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman. And in March, I believe they're going to be adding more, including The Flash, Green Lantern, and Martian Manhunter. I really hope I didn't get those wrong. And this Absolute line is a brand new separate universe to the main continuity of DC, which means that you don't need to have any prior knowledge. The universe itself was created during 2 specific issues, including the Absolute Power run, which kind of discusses the main continuity and how this stuff came about, and then the DC All-In special, which literally tells you how this universe was created. And this universe has been created by Darkseid, a character that if you don't know much about DC, you definitely won't have ever heard of. But removing those 2 issues from the picture, the Absolute line is somewhere you can start. You can start reading from Absolute Batman, Absolute Wonder Woman, or Absolute Superman #1, and you don't have to have any prior experience, which is the main #1 selling point. It is a jumping on point. But for old fans, there's also another major selling point, which is that this universe is different. This universe is more chaotic, and there are major changes with the characters, which we're going to talk about shortly. So for me, someone just getting into comics, this is a perfect way to get into it. And so far, I have been absolutely loving it. There are fresh takes on these characters that I know a little about, but the fresh takes are enough that they aren't jarring for the little that I know. They are also really interesting to not retread ground that I do already know. Everyone knows Batman's backstory. Most people know Superman's backstory, and a few people probably know Wonder Woman's backstory too. But in the case of the Absolute universe, these are turned on their head, and the whole purpose of Absolute is to investigate why these superheroes are how they are, and whether if you remove key factors about their origins, whether they turn out the same, whether they have the same ideals, and whether they fight for the same things. And that's what the Absolute line is going to investigate. Oh, and the one thing I forgot is they have brought together what I have heard is the mastermind, the Avengers, not the Avengers, that's not DC, the absolute pinnacle of comic book creators to come and bring these stories to new people. This is a massive thing for DC. It's going to be a massive thing moving forward. So get on the train now. If you're watching this channel, you probably like reading. And if you like reading, then you probably need things to read. Well, I've got just the site for you, SciFi. SciFi is an absolutely wonderful bookstore that specializes in sci-fi, fantasy, comic books, and of course, manga. I've been using them for absolutely ages because they not only have great pricing but also fantastic customer service and top-notch packaging. Like, look at this. If you want to use SciFi yourself, you can head down to the link in the description and use the code NERDLOUNGE for 5% off every order. So get yourself some books, get yourself a discount, and support the channel at the same time. Back to the video. But enough of backstories, let's talk about backstories. Starting off with Absolute Batman. Absolute Batman obviously follows Bruce Wayne, but this Bruce Wayne is different. Instead of being brought up rich with his parents being murdered at a young age, he was brought up poor, and only his father was murdered in his youth. And for this reason, he was brought up on the other side of Gotham. We're seeing the other side of Gotham, and he's not the billionaire playboy. He's just a massive, built like a brick house juggernaut of a Batman. And where the story starts off, it looks like he's just become Batman, and he's facing off against the villain that I've heard a little about in DC before, but it sounds like it's the Black Mask or Black Mask, and again, it's always gang related stuff. But this one looks really interesting. There's a conspiracy with the kind of Gotham hierarchy. As always, it seems interesting, but that's not the key bit of Absolute Batman. The key bit is Batman himself, because like I said before, this guy is an an absolute monster. He is jacked. He is huge. This is your Ben Affleck style Batman. This is your Dark Knight Returns style Batman. He has this massive logo on his chest that you can clip a pole to and it becomes a battle axe. Like, that's just crazy. And he can pull the batarangs off his head and throw them, which are his ears. I didn't explain that bit. And also his cloak acts more like a bat. He can walk on it. He can use it in battle. And so far, it's just been so interesting seeing this massive unit of a Batman fight off against goons. I've absolutely loved it. We've got teases of some of the villains. He's been surrounded by these villains and some of them may even be his friends. So we get to investigate those relationships too. I'm really liking Absolute Batman so far. My dream has always been to turn this YouTube thing into my full-time job. And the first step to doing that is going to be to hire an editor. So for you guys that are enjoying the content and want a way to help support the growth of this channel, I've created a Patreon with the aim to spend all the money on hiring an editor and bringing more higher quality content to you guys. However, I think it's wrong to just ask you for money. So I've created some rewards specifically for Patreon members as a way to say thank you. So if you like the content and you want to support me, you can head over to the Patreon now. I love you all. Thanks. Next up is Absolute Wonder Woman, where Wonder Woman, instead of being brought up on Themyscira with the Amazons, she's been brought up in Hell. Whilst it hasn't really been explored what impact this has on her, we have had some interesting changes to the character. Her classic weapons are completely different. Her lasso of truth is just completely non-existent, and she has instead this extremely huge Buster Sword / for me, Dragon Slayer-esque blade. And this just looks like it's going to be a more gory, more violent version of Wonder Woman. Think Wonder Woman crossed with Berserk. Think Wonder Woman crossed with God of War. That's what I'm feeling coming into this, and I'm really interested to see it. Now, of the 3 comics so far, this is my least favorite, but I'm looking forward to exploring more of it. There was a cool twist in issue 2 that I wasn't expecting that's going to add some different elements to the story, but overall, this one I can just see where the inspiration lies. There is just a panel that just looks exactly like Berserk, and you know I love Berserk. And also the villains in this, the monsters, they be given off the most Lovecraftian vibes. Again, Berserk inspiration. This just looks cool. I think it's going to be really enjoyable, but yeah, it's my least favorite of the 3. And then coming on to my favorite of the 3, I have been on an absolute Superman fix recently, and this Superman is so cool, and I have just been absolutely in love with it. Again, there's only 2 issues out at the moment, but I have been really intrigued into where they're going to take this. Now, the twist on this story is that instead of being sent to Earth when he was a child and being raised by John and Martha Kent, Superman has instead been sent to Earth as maybe a late teen / adult. Instead of coming from Krypton and having his parents be these sort of evil characters, they are instead really good people, and they're activists and freedom fighters, and they are poor, and they're trying to live in a class system that is built against them. They're both extremely intelligent, but they've been shut down in a controlling dictatorship, and they are instilling these beliefs in Superman, in Kal-El. And at the moment, we don't know why he's had to come to Earth, but he has, and he is then using these ideals that he has to help the people of Earth. In these 2 volumes, the main theme has been this idea of class disparity, of these corporations that are taking advantage of people, and Superman fighting against them. But the reason that I find this so cool, and it's silly because themology in stories is so important, but the reason this is so cool is just because Superman's design is awesome. His suit is alive. He can talk to it. It has its own sentience, and it kind of like flows around him, and he has this cape that's made out of like dust mites, and it like moves and it can protect people, and it's so cool. He has these glowing gauntlets, and you can just see that Kal-El is just full of power, and he's fighting to keep this power under control, and it's going to be so interesting watching him develop into the beacon of hope that he is. He's coming forward with good ideals, but they're different ideals. He hasn't been raised by the same people, and it might turn out that he's going to fight more violently for what he thinks is right, rather than just being a beacon of goodness and hope. This is my favorite of the Absolute line so far. I cannot wait to get more into it. The art is phenomenal, designs are phenomenal, and it looks like there's just going to be really interesting relationships with the characters because Lois Lane is a soldier against Superman. That's all I'm going to say. So the real question is whether people should be getting into this Absolute line. And to be honest, 100% yes. If you are a comic book fan already, this offers enough of a change to be worth reading. It's offering fresh new takes from extremely good creative minds. And that's where it's different to other takes in the past that have been different. We know these people, they are trustworthy. They are going to do the character justice. And the whole thought experiment of Absolute offers such a refreshing take, and it's going to be so interesting watching it develop, and seeing a Justice League in this story is going to be so cool. It's 100% worth reading if you're already a comic fan. But where it's best is if you're new into comics. If you want to get into comics like I am at the moment, this is the start of my comic book journey, and this is a fantastic way to do it because you don't need to know hundreds of issues of backstory, and you don't need to be introduced to thousands of characters in every issue like I was in Absolute Power and the All-In special. You can just read Batman, and it's just Batman. There's no Robin. Like, there's nothing. You have these hints to characters you have heard of, but they are new, they are refreshing. You can watch them grow from the beginning, and I think that's something that comics don't do enough, and is a really important part of why I like manga so much, because you can start stories and read them from start to finish. You don't have to know any backstory. That's what this Absolute line is going to be, and for that reason, I think it's a phenomenal thing that DC's doing. And so far, we're 3 into Batman, 2 into Wonder Woman, 2 into Superman. It's all really good. I've really enjoyed it, and I 100% recommend you get into it too. But now it's your guys' turn to let me know what you think of the Absolute line, if you've started it already, or if you haven't, what you want to see from it. Who's a character you want to see in the Absolute line, them do a fresh take of? Do you want to see some villains? Let me know in the comments below. While you're down there, you can also like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be alerted every single time that I upload. And if you want to support the channel, you can check out my link to SciFi, where you can buy yourself all of the comics that I've talked about today, or any manga or books if that's more to your fancy. And if you want to support the channel directly, you can subscribe to the Patreon, which will get you some additional benefits. You can view all my videos ad-free, for example, but all the information is down in the description. If you want to help the channel, head down there, it would be much appreciated. Last but certainly not least, if you've enjoyed this video and you want to see more of this beautiful face, you can check out the video on the left and right of me. They've been recommended just for you. But if you're done for today, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.